And good morning. So, we're gonna have a little fun with some doors today. We're not gonna paint the whole door. Instead, I was thinking, I had a little idea. I wanna do a finish off. So we're gonna go one side brush, one side just a roller. And it's kind of a little experiment to see how they lay out. So I'm not anticipating too much of a difference, but we're gonna go ahead and brush. We're gonna go ahead and roll. We're just gonna do a panel each. And then we'll go ahead and paint the whole door in another video. So while I do each of these, I'm going to give you some tips on how to use a roller to roll these and how to use a brush to. But before we get to our painting, we're going to have to do a little bit of prep. And whoever painted it last just used a roller and it doesn't look very good. So I'm going to show you how to use a roller on these raised panel doors the correct way. So first, we're going to prep. We're going to sand here. I might just sand the whole door, we'll see. But we're going to definitely sand down these. I want to make them nice and smooth. And we're going to take this hardware off, take this guy off. We'll go ahead and leave the hardware. We don't need to take the hardware off. We're going to be painting here or here today. We're just going to focus on brush versus roller. And then I'll make another video about painting the whole door. I got other stuff to do today, so we're not going to spend time letting this dry and then painting the whole door after. So first in here, it's got these this kind of ornate edges. So you really need just to run the edge of your sandpaper along each one. Alright, so you can see we got our panels sanded down. You can tell they're much whiter. So we'll see how these come out. I think they're going to be okay. These are the main part I wanted to see how they lay out. So we're going to go brush, roller, roller, brush. Not sure which one which yet. So that's all done. We're going to dust it off. Actually, I like to get, majority of the dust builds up here. So I like to just give that a little brush. We're going to dust that, wipe it down, wipe it down. So pretty much the bulk dust is off. Still quite a bit of dust on there though. And then we got our handy, these are just at Home Depot, tack rags. These last quite a while. So you take them, I like to spread them all apart. And I kind of like to go like that. It's all of it. I kind of like to leave it big so it kind of grabs everything around, right? Check it out, and it's pretty much, there's no white there, so I know all the dust is picked up, okay? I'm gonna put these guys in a little plastic bag, and that'll save it great for next time, okay? Don't just toss that, you can use this quite a bit. They're a couple bucks and they last a whole long time, so there's really no reason to use a rag with water unless you just don't have one. You don't have the ability to go grab one real quick. Use a tack rag, always better. Got it all sanded, dusted, tack rag. Now we just need to spot prime these little burnt edges where I had to get a little aggressive in some spots. There was some drips and crust and all that, so we have to spray primer, just, here is fine. Just these edges. Make sure it's going to stick and the paint's not going to bleed through. If you just put paint on this, they'll probably stick, but this is going to bleed through. The primer is going to help seal that and keep it in there. We do want to cover the handle. We didn't take that off because we're not painting the whole door. So we're just going to take a little masking machine. I normally wouldn't waste blue tape, but I'm out of masking tape. I gotta get some more. But we're just gonna go like that. That's it. That's all we need. Just make sure no overspray falls on that. Oh, this is oil base. This is nasty stuff if you breathe a lot in or inhale a lot. Okay, so let's go get a respirator just to set a good example for you guys. Safety first. So we're always moving. All right, so we are back. Got the paint ready, and we're going to go ahead and continue with our experiment of looking at a brushed finish versus a rolled finish. And I'm curious to see what it's going to come out like. Little shake. Pour from the back side. You don't want to pour from the front because that's going to cover. Sometimes paint can spill, and then you don't know what color this is. You don't know if it's semi-gloss, flat, so always pour from the back of the label. And try out this Wooster brush. It's actually a little stiffer than, I think it's a little stiffer than I normally like, but we're gonna try it out. Okay, so we got our paint, we got a roller, we're ready to go. So we get a couple taps, we get a little bit of paint on there. And I like to always start at the top, okay? So I'm gonna start at the top. Just gonna brush right in there. I'm gonna cut along the top line. Go down, across, very lightly. Dip. Let's go ahead and take this down. So we're basically cutting in this edge here. We're really trying not to get any paint over the side. Let me see if I can show you guys. So we're here, right? So we want to keep the paint inside this edge. I got a little bit over right there. When that happens, very lightly, actually I have a rag on me, I don't know why I use my finger, but take a little rag. Oops. I'm trying to look in the camera as I do stuff, so it's kind of a little tough, but just take a rag, and we don't push over, we just keep it flat and flush to the door, and that will take off any extra off the sides. And the reason for that is, if you see my other video where I explain how I paint doors, I do all this inside first, this panel, I do all the panels, and then I'm going to be doing this area last. So if I get this paint there, and by the time I get back to it, it's going to be a little set up, a little tacky, and a little dry. And what's going to happen is it's going to make it look ugly. Okay, see this little thing? You see brush marks on this? That's from somebody doing that. So I'm showing you guys how to make it so you don't get ugly brush marks, you don't get ridges, lines, all that. So, all right, let's continue on. So I got to get back to it before the paint I've been putting on sets up. I'm just right here, right? So we're cutting in that side. We're also kind of cutting in this side. We don't want the same thing. We don't want it to come here quite yet. That's going to be last. And it was a little slow just a second ago when I was showing you guys the way to do it, but that's okay. And then we just lay it off. So that's all done. A lot of people I see paint, they just sit there and they brush and brush and brush, and you don't need to brush all that. You just put the paint on, and then you go. So I cut in this whole side, right? Cut in, now we're going to cut in this side. Those edges done. Lay that off. Sometimes it builds in these corners, so you need to take the corners toward the center. Take some of that paint away and move it toward the middle. A lot of times on doors you'll see a drip here, or here, or here, and that's just from too much paint building up in those areas. So take that paint and put it somewhere else so it doesn't drip down. So we got a little paint down here from that. It's kind of a hard section to do without getting paint over the edge. So we take our rag. You can even take your finger, put it up, and kind of just wipe with your finger real lightly. There you go. Now there's no paint on this flat, smooth surface. And that's what we're looking for. So actually I was worried about my roller having too much to roll. I'm actually gonna roll this so I can lay it off with the brush. We're still gonna brush it up to see how the finish goes. And the reason I'm rolling sideways is because if I roll here, some of this roller stipple can go around the edge and affect what I just brushed. And I don't want to touch that anymore. I just want to use this to put the paint on. My brush touches those sides or edges a little bit, that's fine. I barely dip this when I go back in, roll it off. Let's get a nice smooth. So here, I like to go down first because you don't want to catch this edge with your brush. And what it's going to do, it's going to make, if you go this way, it'll pull the paint off and you'll get a drip underneath here. So I like to go down first, and then from a little bit above that, I take it up very lightly. Kind of like you have an angel on your hand. Get those edges. Those edges very lightly. Up, up, up. All right, so this one's gonna be a little tougher because we're gonna have to push this roller into the profile, and we're gonna get a little bit more coming over the edge than we had on this one, right? We had a little bit come over the edge with the brush. You give it a little wipe. This one's gonna be a little bit more, so we're just gonna have to wipe it. We're gonna have to wipe it a little bit more, that's all. All right, so I'm gonna get some of the paint off. So I'm just gonna go across. I'm not getting all the way to these edges yet. I'm getting the majority of the paint off. Now we get a little bit past. You guys go like this, and I mean, you're just getting sloppy. So this, take a few seconds extra, like this. We're making sure our paint's covering everything, and we're also kind of making sure there's not a whole bunch of excess paint on here. And look for ridges. When you see a ridge, just lay it off. A little bit in the corner. Okay. And then really get your nose in there close and look. And say, okay. Make sure everything's covered. Make sure there's no holidays. That's pretty much, I can see that's much faster, right? That's done. There's no big fat lips. There's no big roller marks. Everything's covered, everything's solid. It'll probably need another coat, but that's okay. We got the paint all over, right? So we gotta be real careful. We don't want to touch any of this. We don't want to even touch that stuff, right? So let's make sure our rag is wiped up because we don't want to accidentally hit what we just finished. So we real lightly wipe around. And it can even be a little wet. We're just getting the bulk majority of the paint off. We're not trying to wipe every single bit of wetness. We're trying to get rid of the buildup. So we leave that on there. And that's going to dry a little bit higher than we add other paint. And we just want to make sure it's all even. And we don't want to make we want to make sure there's no high ridges, right? So just got a little piece of hair. So look pretty wet. Come down this side. I'm just kind of going slow to show you guys, you know, the process of it. You wipe nice and easy. All right, so we're gonna let that dry and we're gonna see how it looks. I think the roller might be a little too stiffly, but we'll see. I'm curious to how it will dry. Always looks much different when it dries than it does when it's wet on the door. So just let it dry, and if you need to fix something when you're after it's dry, then do that. Don't start messing with stuff in the middle of your painting. It's the last thing you want to do. And so there you can kind of see, there's the brush side, and there's the roller side. It's a little stipply, so I'm really curious to see how well that's gonna lay down. It laid down pretty well on the other door. I might have put a hair too much paint on it. We'll see. See you guys when this is dry in an hour or so. All right, so it's actually the next day, and our panels are fully dry, so we're scoping them out to see how the finish turned out. And I don't know if you guys can get a good shot in the, you know, good look in the camera, but to me they're identical. You can maybe see a couple little brush streaks on this side, just barely. That brush is a little stiff. I used a little softer brush. Might have laid out a little bit better, but I mean, that's just me sticking my nose to the grindstone to be able to see it. So, you know, like a foot back, you can't see anything. They're both pretty much identical. Sorry about the shadowing and all that in here, but the lighting's odd, and I got to figure out how to do lighting better. But here's the rolled side. There's a few things, you know, under the surface, so one more coat will take care of that. You know, you always got to do 2 coats. And then here is the brush side. So finishes are pretty much identical, and I would say that neither wins. You can kind of see under here, here's what we had to sand kind of aggressive to get some of there's some drips and chunks of stuff in here. So when you have that, you have to, you know, you do the first coat, you just sand that just a little bit, and then it will come out nice and perfect on the next one. So there you go, that's the end result.